Yeah, I'm back. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, you guys were blessed to see Dr. York, man. That was really a blessing. I wish I had a chance. After I became conscious, I ran across some of his work, his material. He keeps you studying for years, trying to catch up.
Right. Right.
Man, his studying is far. I mean, it's
right. Yeah, because the thing is, I had this conversation with a fellow lecturer last week, and we were talking about lecturers now. That's out. My father, he's locked up, but we were talking about just lecturers that's out now. There's not very many lecturers out now that's vast.
Right.
The one thing I notice about lecturers now, I'm very analytical about pretty much everything. So when I listen to people, if I go on like a YouTube and I listen to people or I look at lectures, I look at how do that person focus on like one subject, or are they or do they have an array of information that they cover?
Yeah.
And the one thing I noticed about my father was he covered pretty much everything. The thing is, he covered pretty much everything that you can pretty much cover, whether it be religion, whether it be science, whether it be African history, whether it be sovereignty, whether it be all these things he covered. He didn't leave a stone unturned.
Right.
And when you say we were blessed to have him, that's right. A lot of people, we really didn't know what we had when we had it, and that's the reality, man.
You did, man, because he wasn't talking. He built things. Like a lot of guys I see now, that's like the movers and different groups, they're not building anything. They're not.
Right.
They're just talking through the Wu-Nuwaup, the website, and do conference calls. That's it.
Right.
But Dr. York, it wasn't any talking, brother. He went down and built. You know what I mean? Like, y'all come do this. And I hate I missed it. Man, I hate I missed it. I was in Alabama during that time, but I wasn't conscious at that time.
Right.
I just regret I missed it, man. Maybe one day I'll get a chance to speak to him. That's one of my goals.
I think, my father said too, it was like, it's not so much what you didn't have the pleasure of being a part of, as what you have the opportunity to be a part of now.
Correct. That's correct.
I think that we have that same potential to do these things, because I talked to a sister Monday about she wanted to just do a community life style, and I said, well, look, the first thing we have to do is be in control of our community economically first.
That's right.
If you look at from my father, as you track him from Brooklyn to upstate New York all the way to Georgia, he was in control economically. No one could buy him out and say, I'm buying your property from you. He would not allow that. He controlled everything going on, and his thing was, conscious community is cool. You got RBG, you got these over here, you got this group, you got the 5%ers over here, you got the Morrison Symbol over here, you got Nation Islam over here, you got all these groups, and I respect all those groups, but I'm like, let's separate completely and do our own thing. That's the way he thought.
Yeah. This guy, he was. I knew his style. He started waking too many people up. Once he started doing that, he became a threat to him, because he was waking everybody up. If you listen to him, you with him for life, because he was speaking truth. And he was like, I like about him, he was like, prove it. He can prove it. You know what I'm saying? Don't believe me. You know what I'm saying? Check it out. And once you check it out, it's there. It's on point. Everything is on point.
Right.
Everything.
Right. His thing was, historically speaking, where can you, if you're teaching somebody something, where can you find that? Where is it? Just give me the evidence and show and prove. That's all he just kept saying.
Yeah. That's
what
I like about him. And what thrilled me is like my family is like Freemasonry and saying Eastern Stars, but it's out of England. So if Nimrod, I got this from when they say Nimrod was a Freemason, why do we have to ask England for the charters? We should be giving out the charters. And that just blew me back, man. I was like, he is right. You know what I'm saying? So I went on my study about Nimrod. You know what I'm saying? Every time I listen to YouTube thing, it takes me like a couple of days to finish because I pause, I look it up, you know, and it's just, man, the guy was amazing.
Yeah, that was on. Matter of fact, you could take the Holy Bible class, the lecture that he put out in 2001. When he talked about the charters. It was like, why are we asking them for a charter when we gave them a charter in the first place?
Yeah.
You know, and that's something we were trying to teach Prince Hall Masons. It was like, you're begging and pleading a group of people that you civilized.
Correct.
Do you not understand what you're doing here?
Correct.
And I think a lot of Prince, like you say, he woke up a lot of people. When we showed ourselves as Masons and we were waking up Prince Hall Masons were under the rule of Euro Masons for a long time.
Yes.
And so when he was saying, look, y'all don't have to go to them no more for this. Y'all don't have to tap dance and do all the things that you're doing to get these charters and to call yourself legit. You don't have to be that. You can come right here. Right. And we can formulate, and they have to come to us eventually because our numbers would be so great.
Correct. That's what I like. That's what I like, man. Don't ask for anything. We independent, you know?
Right. You know, it's about being independent. The whole thing was about being independent. You can learn all the information in the world, but if you're not truly independent from a specific system, you're still being controlled by that system.
Correct.
They still have a monopoly on the things that you do. You know, unless you're working, and there's some people who are working towards that, and I can respect that. I can work with whoever's working towards becoming independent. That's why I respect brothers like Polite, because he is at least showing improvement. His whole thing is a formula of food, clothing, and shelter. And I'm just watching. My thing is, I'm not into emotions. My father's the same way. I'm not into emotions. I'm not into why you don't like him and whatever relationship you had. I could care less. My thing is, what do I see out of what this person's doing?
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah. Everything else is irrelevant.
That's correct. I was speaking to a brother from the Moorish rite, and I'm like, you guys have been going since 2001, and you do not own a building? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on here? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And because one of the brothers said, I mentioned something about the Nuwaubians. And I was like, those brothers was in Georgia. They bought land. They had buildings. They wasn't talking. They was doing their things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, you guys been rolling since 2001. This is like 11 years. And you guys doesn't even have a building to call your home, you know? It was crazy. I was like, Dr. York, the only one that did it right, the correct way.
Mm-hmm.
He was the only one. It'll never be another Dr. York, you know? Never.
No. Because the mentality of complete separation, a lot of blacks, Africans are scared. They're afraid of being completely separated from the oppressor. They don't want to be completely separated away because they're so dependent upon him for everything that if you're like, well, look, let's go over here, let's aggregate, let's get our land, let's get our, let's make sure our women and children are straight. We don't have to be over there no more. Mentally, they're like, man, it's hard to turn that over to be completely self-dependent.
Right.
It's very hard.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's what it is.
That's all. Mentally, it's like they just can't get out of that, and it's like, come on, man, really? You have so much chances of being more successful outside of this system than you are within it, because do you really expect this individual to allow you to grow progressively in his system if he was the same one to put you in bondage?
Correct. Yes.
Like, that makes no sense. That makes no sense at all. That's the part to me that I just will never get. But I realize where it comes from. I really realize where it comes from. That's the leftover spell, man. Like you said, post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's a spell. You know, it's like if you've been asleep that long and you still waking, you still trying to get the crud out your eyes. So it's been too long. It's been way too long, and I realize too. We are very deep in this country. Millions and millions of Africans in this country for a long time. It might only take, honestly, the way this world is going, maybe a couple of thousand of us to really make the moves we need to make, because a lot of us really are going to become distractions because they're going to be so invested into that world that when it comes time to start nation building, they don't want to do it. You know, because the knowledge is one thing. You can learn about this and learn about that all day, but until you're really about building, everything else is irrelevant.
That's right.
It's totally irrelevant.
Totally irrelevant. I was reading one of his books. I'm not trying to get off subject. The Genesis book. I couldn't find a what to ask a Christian, but in Genesis, it was like Abraham's journey. I think it's Genesis 12 in the book about Abraham's journey.
Right.
He went to Egypt, you know what I'm saying? And that's where Abraham found out, you know what I'm saying? He studied Egyptian legend and things like that. But I was reading about Brother Ray Hagan said Abraham never existed. Is that true?
Yes, that is absolutely true. You have to think about it like this. Anytime the three most prominent people in the Bible really are Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, right?
Yeah.
They're like the most publicized. If you look at it from this standpoint, think about it like this. All three of these men, in order for them to have any form of validity, they have to be tied into Egypt.
True.
At some point, because they all went to Egypt at some point. Abraham, he was in Egypt at some point when he got taught his wife through ancient Egyptian pharaoh Zalza. Okay, you go into Moses' time. Moses confronted Ramesses II. You know, turning the staff into the snake into the staff. The whole "let my people go" story. The whole thing. Jesus was in Egypt until he was 13 years old because they were trying to, hide him from Herod.
Right.
If they don't put these three men in Africa, in ancient Egypt, in ancient Tanun, you don't find them in any other forms of history. Prior to that, there's no meaning that's the only way that they can have some form of validity, some form of legitimacy, if they tie these three people to Egypt, because all three of these people, there's no tomb of them. There's no tomb of Jesus, of where he died in Rome. There's no tomb of Moses where he died. There's no tomb of where Abraham died. There's only folklore and fable and parable and stories. There's no actual facts of where they come from, of where they were, what they did. See, when you look at all three of these men, you have to go back and say, well, look, all of these African sciences predate Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, which all three of them are a part of anywhere, whether it be ancient Tanun, the Egyptian mysteries, whether it be, even if you're going into Indian culture with East Indian, what you're dealing with Krishna, who was Christ. All these different cultures predate these specific individuals, and if you're looking at their stories, they're very similar to stories or to actual individuals who existed. For example, if I'm going into the Jesus story, if I look in King Tut or Tutankhamun's story, we find out the same boy prodigy, the man that was killed by his worker named Ai, when he hit him in the back of the head 3 times. He died when he was, Tutankhamun died or was killed when he was 13 years old. Okay? Yeah. If you go into to Jesus' story, he was a child prodigy. But then if you go back pre-dynastically, during the Neolithic period, dealing with the Neolithic gods, Har or Haru, or as the Greeks say, Horus, his story lines up perfectly with Yahshua or Jesus' story or Isa's story. It's the same story, only except if I go into ancient Tanna, ancient Egypt now, or go into Egypt now, I can find him on the walls. I can find the translation of his languages and evidence of him existing.
Yes, on the wall.
But with Jesus, there's no evidence of this individual existing. You know, right. Same thing of you go into Abraham. You go into Abraham's story. The only way to really tie Abraham to anything of validity again is you have to go into where he found his wife Keturah, and Keturah was the daughter of Zalza. But if you look at everything that Zalza did, connected with everything Abraham did, Zalza actually existed because Imhotep existed, and Zalza was actually the teacher of Imhotep. But if you go into Abraham's story, or Abraham or Ibrahim, it's only a fable because, remember, his name, Abraham or Ibrit, was just merely meant to cross over from the Tigris-Euphrates Valley into the land that he was in. That's all it merely meant. The word Ibrit or Hebrew or Ibrahim is merely just a definition of what this specific individual did in that specific story.
Oh, okay.
But again, there was no confirmation of this specific individual actually existing. But there is confirmation of Zalza existing because they kept record, not just of what's on the wall, but the statues of the carvings of these specific gods. Because he was not only a pharaoh, he was one of the elders who he was born here. Remember, Zalza was born here and he raised himself up because there's many elders in the elder story that were either born here and they raised themselves up to be an elder, or they were incarnated elders. He was one of the ones that was born physically in Tanun at that time and was able to raise himself up to that eldership. You know, based upon
Elohim, right?
Right.
Like the 24 elders in Revelation.
Exactly.
Speaking about the 24, you talking about like that part of the Elohims, or Elohims has me confused a little bit. That's come from Anu. The Elohims come from Anu, right?
Well,
the
actual, but then you have to go back now and think Anu only goes back 49,000 years. The story of Anu, the Sumerian Bible or the Enuma Elish, these are that was actually the same thing that the way we're looking at Christianity and Judaism is the same way we look at Samaria, because Anu was just a Sumerian god. He was just a Sumerian sun god. That was it.
Okay.
But the Sumerians got their information from ancient Tanun and ancient Egypt. Okay? When you say Anu, A-N-U, you're actually saying the city of Heliopolis, the city of the sun that was named Anu, but it was spelled A-N-N-U. So when you go into ancient Sumerian information about a Most High, what you're getting a fabrication of the city of the sun that was named Anu, A-N-N-U. They just took a word and took one of the ends out and gave themselves a Most High.
Oh, that's the difference.
Yeah, because when you go into their information, again, it only goes back 49,000 years, but then you go into ancient Talmudaean or ancient Tanun or ancient Egyptian information, that's 17 million years of confirmation of actually existing gods. So no, he's Reagan is very correct in what he said, because again, we're going by facts and not by fables.
Right.
You know, as long as you stay within that realm, you're going to be all right. the thing with the religious world is they're the ones that start squirming in their chairs when it comes down to confirming things. See, we have all our confirmation we need. We don't need their alien religion for anything. You know, we're giving too much of our African power to things that never existed, and that's our problem. One of our main problems is our spiritual power is going in the wrong direction.
Right. But it's the help from our own people, like the preachers and pastors and ministers, all those guys, man.
Yeah.
How can we connect with them to get them to start telling the masses the truth?
We got to convince. We would have to convince them that money don't matter.
Yeah, that money, huh?
Yeah, money matters to them. Money matters that because this is a business. The church is a business. It's a big business, and they make their money off of the ignorant. See, this information I just told you is common information, but if a Christian minister walked up and into his pulpit tomorrow morning and said, look, all this information we've been teaching you is BS, and you can find all this information in Africa, and you can confirm all this information as you being God, you don't have to worship no more. Do you think that they really want to do that?
Yeah.
No, they don't want to. That's their meal ticket. They don't. This is their meal ticket. In their mind, this is their meal ticket. You know, they don't want to lose their meal ticket. That's money. That's money. If I can, because again, the church is a big business. The mosque is a big business. The synagogues, all these things make money. You're making money off of ignorant black folks.
This is crazy. I just
millions of dollars, collection plates being passed around and paying your tithes, all this stuff for just think about how many churches, not even all over the world, but in the ghetto, that capitalize off of ignorance every Sunday. That all black people have to do is look up words, even before you go back into Africa. If you just take a Hebrew lexicon and look up the word God in Genesis, and you find out that was a group of deities creating something. But we want to be under.
Where?
Genesis 1:1.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's as you said, that's Elohim.
Yeah.
That's three specific deities creating an actual man.
So this part of Elohim, I'm saying like the 24 elders creating an actual man, or just something different? It
was when you said Elohim, the way they logged gods, they logged them in threes. So if you go into Samaria, when they were going into the Adama project of the creation of humans, in the Sumerian story, if you remember, it was Ninti, Enki, and Enlil. You know,
okay, yeah.
But if you go into ancient Tamaray, you find out it was Sekhmet, Ta, and Bes. So when you read in Genesis 1:1, you're actually reading about, first off, before I go even further, you're reading about Genesis realizing that was taken from the Sumerian Bible story, you know, the Enuma Elish. But you realize the Enuma Elish was taken from the Egyptian mysteries. So when you're reading Genesis, you're actually reading a fabricated African creation.
Oh man, this
you know.
Yeah.
And that's sad that a Christian will literally, Christians have to, right now, Christians have to convince themselves that this is true. Even though in the bottom of their heart they know they're being lied to, that's why they fall into belief. Because in belief, you don't have to have no facts. You can be as ignorant as you want, and people will justify it by ignorance. They can justify it by emotion. That's the biggest thing that stops blacks, stops Africans from really progressing is their own emotion. That's the problem.
You're right about that, because Christians do not want to hear anything but Jesus is God, and they stuck on it, and you can't get them off it. You can just show them factual. You can even show them, like, the Christian black code, and they be like, no, that's not true. And it's just ludicrous to me. It's like, if someone show you proof, it's there, you know?
Right. Right. And they don't want proof. The whole thing with them is they don't want no proof. I'm like, okay, well, look, I'll walk with you through your Bible right now, and I'll show you in Genesis chapter 1 through 4. The first 4 chapters of Genesis. If I give you the first 4 chapters of Genesis, that's an African creation right there. All these beings, when they talk about the gold of that land was good, that's in Africa. That's in Kush. That's in Ethiopia. Okay? The Garden of Eden is in Ethiopia. And you're telling me that it doesn't matter what race that Adam was or Eve was, but you're telling me this yourself, but whoever put this Bible together, it mattered to them. Why does it matter to you?
Yeah, why does it matter to you?
Because they've been conditioned to say it doesn't matter. You know, the beast has conditioned their minds to not find that missing link within themselves. You know, as long as I can keep saying it's all about the spirit, it's about the spirit, it's about the spirit, that I can keep giving my power to the beast as long as I possibly can. And they're fine with that. A lot of people, a lot of these blacks are fine with doing that. They don't want no one to break that with them, man.
Yes, like me, I'm having problems with some of my family members because they think like I'm studying about Egypt and different gods of Egypt. They think I'm devil worshiping. So what I do, I try to find out. I listen to a lot of Dr. York lectures, and I take them through like Genesis 1 and 16, which talking about the 2 great lights. You know, so I try to use the lectures and apply it. I do my studying first, and they think it's straight devil worshiping. And like, I have a lot of family problems. Like, man, this is unreal how they think. You know, but I was the one thinking like that also. I got into the community because I was trying to prove something. Then I got wrapped up into it, and I become, okay, this is the truth. The brother was speaking correct to me.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't. My thing is, how is it devil worship, or the Egyptians worship the devil, if God told certain people to send his only begotten son into that same place? Why would God send his only begotten son into the same place that they worship the devil in?
Right.
And if I would like to know that. I want you to produce an answer for me. That's what I do to people. I don't play them games with them. I don't play the emotional game. I don't play that. That's really all it is. You wanna convince yourself that you're right. No. I want you to give me some facts on what you say. Don't say, oh, that's the devil. How was it the devil?
Right.
That's all I'm asking. Just give me some facts. It's all good. If you can't give it to me, that's okay. You can keep believing in whatever you believe in, and I have reality on my side.
Facts.
That's it. I don't have to believe in nothing. Belief. What is belief? Belief is right. Belief is a trick on Africans' eyes. That's all it is. Belief is a trick that the devil put on the African eyes. That's all it did.
That's it.
Because there's no during colonialism in Africa and during colonialism in our bondage, that's all they did was find ways to take away our spirit and our fight and our warriorship by making us worship homosexuality. Because every one of their gods, image-wise, that they created, whether it's Michelangelo, Leonardo, all these, Michelangelo in particular, these are homosexuals.
Right.
So when you have the image of Christ, you have the image of a homosexual. And you're okay with that.
Caesar Borgia. His name was Caesar Borgia, the image that they paint. Caesar Borgia.
Right. All the images, all the men, if you look at all the men, if you go back, if say you go online right now, the image of Jesus Christ, and they give you a white image, that's homosexual.
Oh, that's deep.
I mean, this is reality, though. It's deep, but that's reality. And no one ever thinks to say, wait a minute, wait, what? If I go back and think about this, these Romans that were creating, that were commissioned to give the image of Christ, the person who was creating it was a homosexual, and the person who was modeling was a homosexual. And I'm supposed to be, as a Christian though, I'm against homosexuality. But the image of God that's on my wall in my church is a homosexual.
That's slavery.
That's ridiculous. That is completely insane. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. That is a sick pathology. As I said before, that is a sick pathology.
Yes, it is.
And we we fall for it because we just can't see it. And, I think a lot of times as well now, a lot of Africans now are falling under the propaganda of homosexuality. So in their mind, they'll say it doesn't even matter no more. I mean, that is sick too.
Yeah, you're right. I'm in California here in San Diego, and it's crazy. I was like, brother, that's not the way to go. But they cool with it. Everybody accepts it out here.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I wasn't built like that.
No.
Not at all. I don't hang in crowds like that. I don't hang out like that.
Right.
No, brother. Brother, me and you the only one on the line because we close somebody out.
It's just me and you.
Oh,
it's me and you. It's just me and you right now. I think people are used to the Wednesday class, so a lot of times I just decided to do a Saturday class Wednesday night, and I didn't get a chance to really pump it. So I said, okay, let's just whoever gets on gets taught.
Yeah.
That's how I do it.
Yeah. Do you have Dr. York to ask a Christian?
I don't. I don't. A lot of those I realize are out of print.
Yeah.
Those are out of print. The 360 questions, I think after a while they begin to get condensed into the degree of Christism. So a lot of times when they got condensed in that book, the circulation of them, they begin to stop circulating because, people started buying that instead of just buying all 4 volumes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can get on to find all of it.
Huh?
Where can I find it on the web?
Books like those, I noticed, I found a lot of those on eBay. A lot of old ones I found on eBay, Amazon. I think Amazon has some 360 ones. I think I've seen 2 of them. This is about a couple of months ago, though. You can check Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Check Amazon. They didn't have 360 questions to Christian.
Okay.
In a couple of months, but I've been doing some serious looking.
Okay. Yeah, that's just how I found a lot of my old ones, the old books. I found a lot of those really on eBay. But that 360 book, let me see. And you're located in San Diego, right?
Yes.
If you can get in contact with the people in New York, because what I found was a lot of the old books in New York too. A lot of people just stopped buying those books. I've seen a lot of people still carry those books, especially the Brooklyn bookstore. I think they might have 360. I think you should, check and see if you can get in contact with them down there. I don't think they got rid of all the old ones. I think the bookstore there still carries some 360 books. Just see if you can check that one out though.
Oh, okay.
Just to make sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Because they might have that. They might have it.
So with the Freemasonry, the Nuwaubian Freemasonry, this is totally different than Prince Hall, correct?
Yeah. It's the difference is that the information, what's being said, the whole thing is, when you're going with Prince Hall, you're going with dated information in the 1800s of a man named Prince Hall that, had to get his charter and called the African law, had to get his charter through Europeans and everything, whereas with us, it's like we ain't got to get a charter through nobody. We had our own charter in the first place.
That's what I'm talking about.
That was the difference.
Yeah. Well, did Prince Hall have a problem with it, or they?
Prince Hall Masons?
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of them did. In Atlanta, they had a problem with us.
But it was
they had a huge problem with the Whoppers. They couldn't stand that. They were like, what? They were like, what are you doing? What are you saying? They didn't like that. They wanted, I mean, it was funny because we were like, wow, you're having a problem with us telling you to be independent. You know, they would charge us up on the street. In Atlanta, they would come at us like hard.
That's great.
You know, that said, you can. It's funny how an oppressed people can, instead of going against what's oppressing you, you're going against someone who is also being oppressed as well in this system.
Right.
Rather than solving the problem, you're making a bigger problem by going against someone who is under the same problem as you. This doesn't make any sense.
None of the brothers visit y'all down in Georgia? Like when y'all had the place down there, Dr. York? Did any of your brothers visit down there or no?
Yeah. It was Prince Hall that decided to demit over and become the Wapian, or it was just some that decided to visit. It was, it was a good amount that respected it and accepted what we were saying because they couldn't dispute. You can't dispute history. You can't dispute something that is real. You can dispute, meaning that when I say dispute history, meaning that you can't dispute history, meaning that you can't dispute something that's factual. When you're dealing with their system of history, it's what they did was, I'm talking about the beast, they just omitted 90% of history and made everything 10% white. That's what they did. That's what history is to most people in this world. But if you take it from 100% category, we're pretty much on an honest level. 95% of everything that was created is Africa is responsible for it. So when you're going with masonry and you take it to that extent, there's no way that we're not responsible for that. Because, again, even if you go, let's say you just omit Africa as a part of masonry or the Moorish influence in England and Scotland Yard, and you just try to just erase that part out, and you just deal with European Scottish Rite masonry, it only goes back a certain amount of time, because then you have to explain, okay, so are you saying masonry only goes back, 200 years? You would have to you would have to keep enforcing a lie upon people by saying, well, we were the first. No, you can't say that you're the first to create it, because obviously it came from somewhere. So if I just said, okay, I'm just going to go back to George Washington, for example. There's no way, if I go into George Washington's story, the only way for you to really be fair about it, or you to be right about it, is if you have to still bring in the Moors. You would still have to bring in Moorish information, because they're responsible for civilizing George Washington.
They was?
Yeah, they were responsible for civilizing. Remember, George Washington originally didn't come from his country. He came from Scotland Yard, and he relocated to America. Most of the presidents and elected delegates in the Congress, they were civilized in England first and came here and started colonizing parts of Africa first, then came here. Remember, George Washington he owned slaves.
Yeah, he did.
And he was one of the first to record it. He was one of the first recorded slave masters to perform homosexuality with a lot of his men that were slaves.
George Washington?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He was a huge pedophile. Huge pedophile with a lot of the African boys, too. A lot of people don't know that either.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is historical facts. And a lot of people, just the big knock on Moorish history that people are trying to push now, they're trying to say that Moors sold Africans into slavery. I'm like, that's incorrect, first of all. And then secondly, why would they do that when Sidi Muhammad, who was a Moor, had signed a treaty, had George Washington signed a treaty at a certain point, or had a treaty that was signed to get them to stop slavery in America? because they realized slavery was literally illegal. This was the City Muhammad one was in the 1700s. It was 2 treaties that were signed by Moors to stop slavery in 2 instances. One, the kidnapping, and the bondage that was already being taken place already in America.
Okay.
See, this is the part of history not just whites don't teach, but a lot of the people in the conscious community don't teach. They don't teach about the treaties that were signed by Moors to stop our bondage and to stop the kidnappings, the illegal kidnappings of Africans coming over here to America to be in bondage or as we say, chattel slavery.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the thing is, go ahead, brother.
George Washington started, the homosexuality, George Washington?
Yeah, he was one of the first ones to do that. You know, I mean, meaning recorded ones.
Hello?
Go ahead, I'm here.
Oh, I heard that beat. A lot of the Prince Hall brothers, they love George Washington. I mean, like,
I'm sure they do.
He is the hero. But
right.
But the black guy that's in the picture with George Washington Moore, do you know the name of that Moore, or just a random picture of him?
I'm not even sure what the name of him was. I know exactly what picture you're talking about. I'm not sure the name of him. I don't know myself. But I'm not surprised that a lot of Moors are really into that. I'm not surprised. I mean, a lot of them don't know a lot of the information. A lot of it's a lot of information that a lot of our brothers don't know. You know, so a lot of it is just you're not responsible for what you don't know.
Right.
You're only responsible for what you do know.
Correct.
But yeah, George Washington. I realize homosexuality, of course, started in Europe first. So when you're dealing with European men, from an ideological standpoint, they think homosexual first. Remember the generals and everything in Europe, their philosophy in Europe was, in order for me to really fight along with you and be a real team player with you, I have to sleep with you.
What?
This is reality. This is how the European man mindset thinks. In order for me to really be, or for me and you to really have a good team-based fight together mentality as the Europeans created, in order for us to really have that together, we have to sleep together.
That's crazy.
That's how they thought. This is not only in George Washington time. This is in Roman time.
I heard a lot of Greeks have statues, homosexual statues, and different things.
Yeah. And realize this: homosexuality amongst Africans in America, that's an American-based situation. I always say, think about it like this: if you look at Africans that come over to this country, how many of them, if you look at their whole family, how many of them do you see as being homosexual?
None.
Exactly. So because there's a lot of people within the conscious community that are trying to say that homosexuality among black people is normal. How can it be normal on an ancestry? Because you don't just say normal on your level. Let's take it from a historical standpoint and in a genetic standpoint. How can it be normal on a genetic standpoint if I only see it from slavery on down? Because effeminization really started in slavery, not just 4 or 5, not just 30 years ago. It started in slavery first with the rapings of Mandingo slaves.
Right, correct.
That's the part that blacks born in America don't like to really talk about. They want to believe the lie.
And that's how it got into that's why it's in our community today, because back then they kept it like quiet. You know what I'm saying? That's why men started messing with little boys, and it snowballed out of control.
Exactly.
It's out of control, brother. It's really out of control.
It's really sick, and it's not even from that standpoint. That's one factor. You're looking at the media. The biggest media is the biggest form of propaganda going on right now, because you're pushing something. You're pushing an image of an African male that is not on a warrior mentality. He has to be feminized. He has to be weak. They make everything. If a man is strong, he's misogynistic. And that's part of the feminist movement. All these things, all these factors in white supremacy creates a mentality that's pushed upon our people, because we watch more TV than we do reading books. So when you're looking at all these things going on, you're like, damn. Well, what's the point of me being a man? What's the point of me being a strong man or a masculine man? I might as well be a feminized man. As a matter of fact, I might as well be a woman.
That's great.
What's the point of me being a man if there's no benefits in being there? I'm being persecuted for me being who I am. What's the point of persecution when I can blend right on in and be a woman?
Bro, the war been on us since we first stepped down here. The war is on even more, even through the Trayvon Martin thing. That's just step one, just phase one. You know what I'm saying? It's like we really need to all get together, go to the UN, and file international law for genocide. That's all that's happening.
That's
genocide on the people, because this is sickening.
Yeah, it is. It is, I agree. I think world court, we have to overstep the whole civil rights mentality, because that's a bunch of crap, and we have to be above that, because that whole civil rights thing is, to me, nothing but the slave mentality at the end of the day. That's all it comes down to.
That's it, man.